Hi, my name is Yamini Rajan. I'm 17 years old, and I'm here today to talk about why talking about mental health is vital now more than ever. So in 2012, at the age of 11, I moved from Bangalore to Portland, Oregon, and to be honest with you, I was a little bit relieved. I needed the fresh start that this move would give me. And while I was leaving behind my bestest friends in the whole world, I was also leaving behind a traumatic school life. So being constantly bullied from the age of 8, I was ready to let go of everything and reinvent myself in a whole new country. So this proved more difficult than I could imagine. 3 months into moving, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was 12 years old, alone in a brand new country, brand new school, and I was scared out of my mind. So this was not a good combination of things, and from this point on, I spiraled into a really deep depression. And I stopped talking to my family. I spent really long hours alone by myself in my room, and I tried to make myself as invisible as possible at school. So eventually my mom got better and I made a few friends, but the darkness I had been feeling continued. And I just never felt good enough. I was too brown for the white kids and I was too different for the Indian kids. And I was stuck in this weird limbo of trying to figure myself out and fit into this whole new culture. And my depression manifested into a vicious cycle of self-harm, anger, and panic attacks. I was furious with myself for feeling this way, and I was also furious with the world for not understanding why I felt this way. Eventually, things became too much, and early in my 8th grade year, I tried to take my own life. Shortly after this, I decided that something had to change, and I went to go see my school counselor. I told him everything, how hopeless I felt and how I didn't know what to do about it, and he asked me how long I had been feeling like this. And to that I replied, forever. That's the thing about mental illness. It feels like a never-ending fight. After telling my school counselor, things went by fairly quickly. My parents were informed and I began going to therapy pretty regularly. And then in April 2014, I began to suffer from psychotic hallucinations, which sent my suicidal tendencies off the charts. I was hospitalized in psychiatric ward for 15 days, and while there, I realized that this was a fight for my life. And it was a fight that I hadn't been taking seriously at all. I realized that if I truly wanted to stop feeling this way, then I had to work for it. After getting out, I stuck true to that promise. I reconnected with my parents and my little sister, who I spent a really long time pushing away. And I figured out which parts of my life were negatively affecting me and how to manage my mood. It would be easy for me to say that now I'm cured and perpetually happy and everything's going great, but in all honesty, I'm not. I still go through bouts of depression where I sit in my room and cry, and I still suffer from panic attacks and super nervous in class where I have to leave. But the thought of suicide is still my first escape when things are hard. However, now I know I can handle it. I know that when I feel like self-harming, I can turn to my art, or when I'm on the brink of a panic attack, I can use the breathing techniques that I learned in therapy to calm myself down. By reaching out and asking for help, I've received the tools I need to ensure I could get past this. Not everyone is this lucky though. Suicide is the 3rd largest cause of death among 15 to 35-year-olds in India, and approximately 20% of young people experience some form of mental illness. Yet only 1 in 10 receives some form of mental treatment. The Indian population is about 1.3 billion people, but as of 2015, we only have 3,800 psychiatrists and 898 mental health clinics across the nation. This needs to change. There are far too many of us who aren't taken seriously or told to get over it, and such mentality shames those who are affected into suffering in silence. Too afraid to speak up against the perceptions of what living with mental illness is like, they would rather allow the darkness to feed off of them than draw attention to the problem. The stigma surrounding mental health is very real, and the shame and fear created can be seen in a multitude of ways over numerous years. That shame exists to this day. The ignorance surrounding mental health and wellness prevents so many of us from reaching out and getting the help we deserve. Unfortunately, the amount of stressors in lives of teenagers is only increasing. More and more of us are breaking down very quickly and at younger ages. Looking around my high school, it's rare to see a day when someone or another isn't on the verge of a mental breakdown due to unstable emotions and stress. Yet very few are willing to speak up and get help. Why? Because we're afraid of the stereotypes, of being told to toughen up and handle it, or the worst of all, so what, it's just high school, watch out for the real world. What many adults seem to forget is that if mental health needs of teens aren't appropriately met, some of us won't make it to the real world. This ignorance is due to lack of education. Mental health is often tucked away in the health curriculum, and it's focused on definitions, not real-life situations, which is adding to the stigmatization. This is a shame, especially when there are so many resources available. From school psychologists to organizations like ASHA International, there is help, but we just aren't accessing it. By allowing this culture to go on, we're allowing this shameful stigma to go on. And it's time we open up a dialogue among each other and combat the shame once and for all. As a society, we need to wake up and realize that mental illness left untreated can have drastic consequences. Living with a mental illness can leave you crippled with self-doubt and hatred. It can also lead to insomnia, trouble concentrating, and mood swings. Yet a lot of the symptoms and consequences are unnoticed by us because they can't be visibly seen. We're quick to sympathize with those who have physical ailments. Isn't it time we extend that same empathy to those with mental illness? A sad reality is that while this conversation among teenagers is shifting, with many of us recognizing the importance of mental wellness, the conversation among older generations is not. Many times, topics like depression and suicide are seen as taboo and should be hidden away from the rest of the world. And I found that Indian parents love and dote on their kids in a way that's foreign to the rest of the world. They want their kids to succeed, not struggle. Oftentimes, this overwhelming love blinds them from seeing their child's cry for help. When my therapist asked for me to be admitted into a psych ward, my mom was absolutely against it. She didn't want to let me go and was willing to do whatever she could to help me herself. So far as sleeping in my room every night to make sure I wasn't waking up crying. It wasn't until she was forced by my therapist, being told that the Child Protective Services would be involved if I wasn't admitted, that she let me go, and that was the best thing she could have ever done for me. In those 15 days, my mother and I realized that the level of care and help that I needed was not something she could have done alone. To all the parents here, I beg you to acknowledge your child's battle. It's not a shortcoming of your own parenting. It's not something your child is doing to punish you, and it's not something they're doing to ask for attention. They aren't lazy or unwilling to work hard. Mental illness is quite literally a disease and should be treated as such. If you're not convinced, then imagine your child has a painful, gaping wound, a wound that you can see and that needs medical attention. Would you deny them access to this medical help? Most likely your answer is no. Mental illness is the same gaping wound. It requires the same level of care and empathy. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So here are 3 big ways that you can help. 1, support organizations like ASHA International and White Swan that are doing a lot of work to advocate. Talk about it. If you're struggling with a mental illness, when you're ready, your story should be heard, and you have the power to change lives when you do so. And if you aren't, just listen. You could be the one to open up a discussion, whether it's joining an organization like ASHA or even just sparking a dialogue among your close friends. For me, speaking here today is an amazing opportunity to advocate for a cause I care about deeply. No matter how you advocate, every voice counts towards the opening of a broader discussion. Another resource is starting writing in the schools. Training teachers to look out for students in distress, teaching children about what mental illness looks like, and helping them understand that what they're feeling doesn't make them an outcast or a freak, and then providing them with resources that allow further help. Showing kids multiple avenues of support to help them feel less alone. And personally, I found that depression made me feel so isolated. Any kind of support helped tremendously. Even just keeping an open mind is one of the best ways to help. By listening and just being there for someone struggling, even if you don't relate personally, can be extremely powerful. Simply being a good listener could save someone's life. I found that talking about my depression made me feel better, and I could never thank those who listened enough. Finally, I would like to thank all of you for being here. Please use this event as a stepping stone to further educate yourself and join the fight against destigmatizing mental illness. It is so important now more than ever to engage in a healthy dialogue, and for hopefully many of us that starts today. Thank you.